We're about to go live. Look, people just can't even wait for us to go live, Dan. We have the one and only
look
Gene
at
Tonkin.
Gene's in the house.
I wonder if Gene's, somehow related. You think? Possibly? I don't know.
It's a very common name.
Yes, it is.
You got one life, for crying out loud. You might as well just give it all you got.
The Deej, Dan Jordan.
Your daily dose of reality. Your daily dose of the Deej.
I can't believe I'm saying this, but I need my daily dose of the Deej.
I make the news. I don't watch the news. I'm a leader.
The Sales Energizer, Dan Jordan.
Listen, don't worry how to sell, baby. Worry about why people buy. And it's fun.
You don't need a 5-hour energy. All you need is the Sales Energizer.
Just when I think it's not going to be as fun as the one before, each one gets successfully better. Success. What's the word I'm looking for? What's it going to take to get you into this car today, huh?
And now, please welcome the Sales Energizer, Dan Jordan.
Boom!
That's exactly it. Do that. Let's do that. Boom. It's weird. It's like, what day is today? It's at the end of March already.
Oh, geez, the specific day? Oh, God, that was a question I wasn't expecting. The 27th? 29th.
I feel I'm just getting into like my New Year's state of mind now. It's like I'm just hitting my stride now. It just keeps getting better. I'm really into, I heard somebody say this today. It was really cool. He said, because it's like Good Friday. So he said, I'm thinking in terms of sales, sometimes you just get beaten up. But it's good to remember. And so the guy, he was preaching about, Good Friday and Easter. And he said, he said, it may be Friday, but Sunday's coming. It's like, boom, we got something big. And so, I don't know why I found that so inspiring. And so I'm thinking, whatever's happening, tomorrow's another day. You never know who you're going to meet on that day that's going to change your life. For me, it was Chris Stone.
Well, that'll get you out of bed in the morning,
Yeah,
one thing I would say about you, Dan, is that you've never had a problem getting out of bed in the morning, and people will say, oh, this person's really positive, but every once in a while, you have off days. But I have no idea how you get up at 4 o'clock in the morning every stinking day. But it's pretty amazing.
It's one of those things you really do need to go to bed right. That's how you do it. You go to bed right.
Turn off the devices, right? Don't drink coffee after 2 or whatever.
I never knew that people actually keep their phones and alarm like in their room. And, when they go to like that or a TV like that wasn't even growing up 1,000 years ago. No one had a TV. Did you have a TV in your room?
Growing up, no. It was like you had a room where the TV was. Now there's a TV in every room and one in your pocket, right? So
that's right. Yeah. And so you can't, there's certain times you can't, I find, this is me, that if I can go to sleep right and like plan my next day or, think about what I want for the next day, I'll fall asleep and then I'll be ready to get out of bed in the morning. If you're there and you're,
I mean, I think there's lots of like people will say, well, do this and take the, drink tart cherry juice or melatonin or like all of those things. But I think to your, like it's a mindset, right? Like if you could clear your mind and say, I felt good about what I did today and I have an idea of what I'm going to do tomorrow, then you can sleep, then you can rest, then you can put your phone out of the room or whatever. I don't know. In case of emergency, maybe you keep it in there, I guess. I don't know.
But you'll hear it if it rings. What did we used to do a million years ago? What's going on? But you got to go to bed. You thinking, was I a plus or a minus day? Here's my secret. Right. When I go to bed at night, I want to collapse. Like I want to be exhausted. I want to be completely run out. I told you this story on my hitchhiking trip. that I took in my 20s before anybody had phones or anything like that. I was around the country. One of the places I wound up was under a bridge with a group of homeless people in North Carolina somewhere. And somehow they kind of liked me, and I was in there, and there was one guy who was like the king of the idiots there, and he was running the whole team, and he kind of liked me. And before I left, he gave me a gift. He says, "You take this pen, you use up this pen," and he goes, "And that's how you should make your life. When you're all done, you want to be completely used up."
Sage wisdom from a homeless, the king of the idiots in North Carolina.
That's right, the king of the. But that's what happens when you go around and you meet people, because sometimes the wisdom is found. It's like secret wisdom. It's not available to all of us. You have to be in the right place at the right time. And so what happened to me was just recently, out of nowhere, for no apparent reason, I met one of the people that you never hear about, but the type of person that counsels to the tippy top, the type of person that helps people who are senior executives become even more important and valuable to their company. And he has thankfully graced us with some of his
Wait, he's here? This person is here today? Oh,
yes. So without any further ado, please help me welcome my new friend and champion, Tom Tonkin. Woohoo!
Hey! Hey, guys, did I do it right? I know I did.
Oh, that was
gentlemen.
Okay,
so I need to jump in on the TV discussion.
Please.
No, because I got opinions about everything. So when I was a kid, my favorite TV show was Johnny Carson.
Oh,
and the reason I wanted Johnny Carson is because my goal was to be in the bandstand. So if this whole thought leader thing triples up, it's going to be, I'm going to go be a musician somewhere, and do something. And if it didn't at that time, we wouldn't have met. So I guess that's a good thing. But so I got a TV. I got a TV so I can watch Johnny Carson, because I lived in the East Coast and it was 11:30. And, for a kid, that's pretty late. So I negotiated with my parents to get a TV so I can watch Johnny Carson.
That's amazing.
That's my TV show.
And so you're, I think I did a little reconnaissance on you. You're a bass player. You mentioned being a musician.
I am
a bass player. So we
I
are a fellow
player.
4-string
I started
slinger.
when I was 10,
Wow,
which was only
player.
8 years ago. But so no, if I could have pulled that whole thing off, we probably wouldn't have met. But
who was do you remember who the bass player was in Carson's in the bandstand?
No. Okay. So when I was watching Carson, I was actually a saxophone player.
Oh,
and that was kind of the thing. And Tommy Newsom was the tenor sax player for Carson. And so that I remember.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to take Tommy's job was my big goal. See, I had it all planned out.
You did. Was Kenny G an influence as well, or no?
Oh, I had a soprano sax. I twisted my dad's arm to get a soprano sax, and I played in the jazz band in high school, and I actually got an award for a solo that I did.
Look at that
on the soprano sax. So yeah, you're setting me up. I'm knocking them down. So I'm
solo sax. Love it.
So solo sax. So how did you move from the sax to the bass? Why and how did that get you on Dan Jordan Live?
Oh, okay. So that there actually is a connection. So I was playing the sax in the late 70s, going into the 80s, and there was not a lot of demand for saxophone. There's a ton of demand for bass players.
Yes.
Because of the genre. You recall coming out of disco, right? We're going into hair bands, and and there's the electric synthesizer was big, and so anybody needed horn parts, right? Instead of getting a horn part, you just give it to the keyboard player, and they could cover it. And so I was like, I wanted to play music, and so I picked up the bass when I was 17. I was a musician with 10 with saxophone all the way to when I was 17. I played the bass, and my first gig was a small German coffee shop. kind of a sort of, and it was a jazz trio, and it was a blast because the two guys, was piano player and a drummer, and they were significantly older than I was. But talk about, breaking in your chops as a musician at 17,
Okay.
right? That was awesome.
Yeah, so they would start each song with eins, zwei, drei, vier. Boom.
We are funny now. Joke number one.
Glieden, glauten, globen.
You will clap now. Okay, very cool.
Anyway, so then, so obviously the music thing wasn't going to happen because it started to feel like a lot like a job.
Yeah,
and I wanted to reserve music to be an outlet. I didn't want it to be a job, and so I quit. I quit in February 6, 1986. Every musician who's been a professional at one point in the quits knows the date, and that's my date. And what was interesting was, and this is actually very important about how we're going to talk about this today, because when I was trying to be a good musician, I thought that if I was technically capable, that fame and fortune would follow me, right? Everything would work out. And little did I know that, that wasn't the case. I quickly came to the realization that understanding people and behavior and relationships and networking and all of that, because I knew professional musicians now, actually musicians that all of you have heard of, that were not as capable technically as I was, and they're out there making a ton of money in music. And it was, how they connected with people. And so that's how it got into sort of that organizational behavior change, is kind of how I landed with that epiphany.
Well, and you had to get out because you were in a hair band and grunge was about to hit, right?
Yeah, and I didn't care for that. And the hair thing, I was challenged there as well. So I did revert to cutting my hair much sooner to have a contrast with my hair buddies.
So hairband. So after that, how did you manage to get into top tier companies in terms of sales and leadership?
I was so I started as a technician, and then I was a pretty good, I thought I was anyway, pretty good technician, but I quickly came to the realization that when I did demos or things like that, it was really the rapport that I was building, right? It was the connection that I was having with the customer. I remember one of my first sales, I was kind of on the fast track to being a thought leader at a very, very young age. I had a few mentors that put me under their wing, and there was an old sage sales rep, and we went to a customer in the Northeast. It was a government, state government that we were selling to. And this is a true story, and it shows you the power of relationships and networking. So now I'm the talking head, right? And I've got a technician who's going to be working with me, and then I've got another sales rep, kind of the older gentleman that was sort of keeping track of me. And so we start doing this demonstration, and the technician takes over, and he's doing the solutions consultant. He's doing this thing, and he's just acting really weird. Fast forward, the guy was on coke, literally was on cocaine. And I mean, I was trying to manage things. I was trying to do all sorts. It was awful. It was terrible. And he just got worse and worse and saying inappropriate things. And finally I was just, we get in the cab. I felt like I was beat up. And the rep looks at me and goes, "Congratulations, you just sold that deal." I was like,
Yeah.
What, are you kidding me? They're not going to buy from me. He goes, "They're going to buy." And one of the things he said to me, and it stuck with me forever, and gentlemen, this is like over 30 years ago, he said to me, "People buy from people and they love you. They're going to buy from you."
That's it.
And they did.
Yeah.
It was actually a huge deal. It was in January, right out of the gate, made my quarter, all of that. And I thought to myself, after this complete disaster, right? Like, it was saved, right? And what was happening? So of course my curiosity kicks in, and I tried to diagnose all of that, and just sort of got better and better at it.
Yeah. Well, so now you've been able, so to work in an area that I've really never been able to crack. My personality, I'm good with small businesses, entrepreneurs, up to a certain size. But when it gets into the corporate world, where there's different levels and there's kind of competing interests, I get into a challenge, because there's you have to work through people to get to people who can make the decision. I'm much more comfortable with the people who can write checks, than the people who can, have a budget type of thing.
Right.
So in the world, you've been able to succeed in that world, and you've been able to help others. You had said one thing to me, which was awesome. You said, people that work with you, everybody makes their quota.
Correct.
Nobody fails in making their quota when they work with you.
Correct.
Ever.
Yep.
How are you able to do that in that crazy world where people don't make decisions based on, in my opinion, sensible things?
Well, it's interesting you say that, because actually I'll tease out something you just said, which is competing interests. You're absolutely right. That is a challenge, is when you do have competing interests, and not sometimes those competing interests are personal interests. They're not corporate interests, which makes it even more challenging. And the idea is to navigate, almost be kind of a therapist when you're talking to people about solving problems and trying to find solutions for them. And you become sort of this uniter, if you will, as you sort of traverse the organization. One of the things that you have to understand about how organizations are set up is the way organizations grow is how they work together horizontally, not vertically. So, for example, when organizations, sort of at the end of the year or the beginning of the next year, they have the massive reorganizations. So-and-so got promoted, and so he's going to get 100 people, and somebody else is going to go that. And there's all of this verticalization, right? People are working in these silos and all that, thinking like the company is going to be better at that. And unfortunately, the evidence is just not there for that. Meaning that it's just rearranging the decks, the deck chairs on the Titanic, right? It doesn't change. What does change is the ability for people to work together cross-functionally. That's how you organically grow. Understanding that is a huge piece of value that you can bring, because when you go and, like you said, into the maze of trying to sell something, what do people do, right? They follow the verticalization. Well, I'm going to go to this guy because this guy's going to behave that way. It's going to behave that. And remember, that's not how it works. What you need to do is you need to go vertically, right? So if somebody says, I have a need, instead of jumping in and saying, who's your boss or whatever, they'd say, well, who do you work with? Right? And so, well, I work with that, let's say I'm in sales, right? And I'm doing some kind of sales operations or something. Instead of saying let me meet your boss or whatever, what you want to first start with is, I want to meet your peer, like in marketing or RevOps or whatever, and then try to figure out like what that relationship looks like and whether or not they're exchanging. And that sometimes it's good, great, use it to your advantage, because now you can get information from each other in that point of view. If it's not, dude, then try to help and fix it and unite them that way. Because by the time somebody buys, you're going to have a whole bunch of people on your side going, yes, we all think this is the right thing, and people become significantly more productive. So,
do you have an example of someone that you've helped do exactly that type of thing?
Yeah, I mean, there's several of them. Let's talk about.
I'm catching you off guard here.
No.
Okay.
It's not. Do I find one? It's which one do I want to use? There was so let's talk about sales enablement for a second, because that's one of these weird places. I mean, everybody, I think, on your podcast probably knows what sales enablement means. And the challenge with sales enablement in organizations, like, well, where does it belong? Does it belong with salespeople? Does it belong in marketing? Does it belong in operations, HR? And lastly, does it belong to itself, right? So you've got all these options. And I was talking to a sales enablement person who wanted me to help them craft a sales process. And so I said, okay, well, where did you get the sales process? What do you think? Well, I was talking to my boss and his boss, and he said, and I'm like, hold on a second, right? Who's your peer? I'm like, what's that got to do with anything? Like, well, because you want a process that unifies people. So who's your peer in marketing? Who's your peer in all these other places? And through that connection, not only did we get a sales process, which was the result or the deliverable, or whatever that they were looking for, but the relationship got better, right? The conversations, the productivity got better, right? Because all of a sudden they got to know each other and they weren't paying attention so much. And I wasn't, right? I wasn't paying attention to their boss, not at least until I saw and sold the value. And so, where does marketing fit in? When does sales fit in? What's the result? You had mentioned before that people buy results, they don't buy processes, right? So, I mean, I subscribe to that philosophy as well. And so, so we did, and again, it was in a Fortune 100 type of company that I was able to help that, and it became kind of the synergistic, 1 + 1 = 3, at the end of the whole thing.
Tom, why do you think people are so reticent to do that? Is it because they have selfish interests, or is it they just got blinders on? Is it leadership? Like, what keeps people from looking at peers and, realizing that they do have skin in the game to be able to do this?
I mean, I do think it's, I want to keep my job and I want to make my boss happy. And there's some of those pressures. I'm not suggesting that this is easy or that, you're in the wrong for doing that. Well, I'm just basically providing evidence from research that I've done for years that companies that grow, right, or, especially companies that grow organically, they grow. That's how they grow, right? They grow with the cross-functional relationships. Leaders that in large corporations that understand and acknowledge this become successful by removing obstacles between those silos, right? So if you're a leader out there listening, right, and people get all concerned about your job is to make sure that there aren't any walls, silos, anything going on, break those, make sure those people are talking to each other, give them the opportunity, empower them, if you will, and we can talk a little bit about what that means, to be able to craft, a relationship and therefore deliverables. And all of a sudden that leader becomes like, well, he gets a lot of stuff done, or she's really, really strong. We should really think about promoting her. And that's how you do it. It's not, chastising or moving people forward on a particular deliverable that, belong to you, if you will, or whatever.
Well, tell us a good, Larry Ellison story, or some good, tell us some story about somebody who, that you've helped increase their stature or level or move out or something in the world.
Yeah. So I have to be transparent. I mean, I had a good fortune to meet and work not along, but obviously I was not that big of a person, but I found myself sometimes in the same room as Mr. Ellison. I got to tell you, that guy's super smart. He's super visionary, man. He's a one of a kind. And you just, all you gotta do is watch and learn. He really is just an unbelievable person in general. I know people probably have all sorts of different opinions, but I'm going to tell you, from somebody that watched him from inside, he is super smart, super visionary. I remember just thinking to myself, some ideas that he had, I'm like, kind of shook my head, and sure enough, like, a year or two later, it just turned into just an amazing piece of our business. So I had an opportunity, as everybody knows and could figure out from my LinkedIn, that I was there for 19 years. And that's where I grew up, right? And so got a lot of opportunities to be. A lot of my contemporaries now ended up in different organizations and just doing such a phenomenal job out there. I think what, if I could, provide different stories of people that I've worked with, over the years, is really having sort of a long game. I think that's it, in sales, right? Because if it's quarterly and weekly, and if you're missing your number, let's have 2 meetings instead of 1 meeting. Like numbers are going to, magically appear if I have more meetings with you, which is ridiculous. But it's exactly what happens, right? And so trying to pull people out of that, and say, it's the long game. Because guess what? There's going to be another Q4. There's going to be another Q3, right? This isn't the only one. And people act like it is. So I'm sitting here thinking about some of the people from a leadership perspective that have started in the ranks. I will tell you this, that my observation over the many years is some of the best sales leaders were not necessarily the best salesperson. As a matter of fact, I think that's a double whammy. I actually did a formal study myself on this topic. And I interviewed top sales leaders across the different companies, people that you would have recognized if I give them their names, and was able to have interviews with them. And all of them were the top salespeople, right? So, but then we got to a point where we extricated the reason for that. It was more like a badge of honor. It didn't really add to their sales leadership, right? So it wasn't like I'm the best salesperson, therefore I will be that's a non sequitur. What happened was they were able to say, okay, I'm a sales leader because the guy above me decided that I was ready for a promotion because I was the best leader. Unfortunately, there's a lot less of those stories than the failed leaders. Because when you have the best salesperson and you promote them, that's a double whammy on the bad side. You got rid of your best sales guy and you basically got a mediocre leader.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because I'm going to make a statement here. It is the skills to be a good salesperson versus a leader is a 50% difference, right? Nobody cultivates and nurtures a salesperson before they promote him. They promote him and they go, okay, now go do your thing. And then they're sitting there going, okay, I'm going to be the super sales guy. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to just go find other salespeople. They're obviously not as good as I am. And I'm going to just hound them and go to their deals and, show them how it's done. Gentlemen, that's not how it's done.
Yeah.
Well, so I have 2 questions, and I'm going to do the second one first, because you said something about those quarterly reports and those QBR meetings and all that crazy stuff that people have to do, and they're constantly on it. And what happens is your prospects and clients kind of know your timing. They know it's the end of the quarter, just as everybody else knows it's the end of the quarter,
Right.
and they know when to hold out for better pricing and all that. And a lot of times they have all the leverage. I see people, I see these guys, and the stress level is amazing. Their entire year is based on this one account that they're hoping is going to close this month, or their bonus is messed up. And you're saying everybody meets their quota if they're with you, and everybody meets their goals if they work with you. How the heck do you overcome that one?
Well, I mean, don't call me on, December 29th and say, I got to make up 108% of my quota. But I'll tell you how I'll actually tell you exact story on how I did that. So years at start, I got a small team and we have a goal. This is back when I used to sell services, and we had a goal, and it was quota. And I actually have 2 stories. But I'll tell you the first one. So, we had a team, and you got this big number, but it's the beginning, and everyone's got bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. We can do it, all this other stuff. And so I said, okay, we have a meeting tomorrow, and what I want you to do, or not tomorrow, we have a meeting next week. What I want you to do is I want you to bring me the slide deck that you want to show me on December 31st. Right? Just tell me what is it that you want to say? Right? I want to say, well, what would that be, Tom? I don't know. I'm 125% of quota. I brought in 2 new logos. Whatever it is that you want to say, and I want you to write it in the past tense. Right? And so sure enough, they do it. And it was a kind of this weird kind of head game kind of thing going on. And we worked through it, and people were now, not only do I want you to present it, I want you to present it like it's a year from now. I want you to tell me everything. Like you're going to say, company ABC, I close about $250,000 with them. Okay, great. When did you close it? Who did you talk to?
Wow.
Right. I mean, the whole thing, right? We took, and then people are like, okay. And next thing you know, you could just see it like, we're going to, okay, great. Now go do that.
Wow.
Right. So
that's powerful.
Yep.
I'm just thinking about that. That's just powerful.
Start from the result and work backwards.
Yeah.
I mean, but people always say, well, that's great. That's wonderful. But then when we did that meeting, which was the Q4 QBR in the second week of Q1, right? Because that's what that was, right? I did a QBR in Q1 that was Q4 in the future. And so I asked all these questions, and they're like, well, what's the right answer? I'm like, it's whatever it is. It's like, right?
That's
it's
money.
like whatever it is. I often ask people when this is an aside, but your unconscious mind has all sorts of information. And so one of the things I always say to people is I want you to write down the best moments of your life. And they're like, what do you mean? And I said, it's the moments that you are thinking of when I just said that statement. Right? It just comes to you. And so all of a sudden, when you say the $250,000, it's like, well, I met the CEO, or I met the person. Oh, how'd you meet him? Well, I saw him at a conference, and I gave him my business card. Okay, well, what did you say about the business card? Right? You just walk them through all of that, right? And they're like, okay. And so then you'd say, okay, is he in your pipeline? What's not? Well, how can you then talk to him? I better put him in pipeline, right? That's the level of QBR. And by the way, that's a significantly more effective way than having, end of March, beginning of April Q1 QBR and say, let me beat you up on all the mistakes you made.
Right. And it feels more attainable, you would think. Like if somebody's like imagining like this is happening and this has happened, how did I get here? I mean, it just feels like much more attainable.
It's so funny. I had a customer. Actually, this was a story that was shared with me because I wasn't in the meeting, but there's several of us in the company that sort of did the same thing. It was a large CPG Midwest company. We were at the CEO level, and we're doing this whole solutioning thing on the whiteboard, and there's the CIO sitting in the corner just shaking his head going, that'll never work, that'll never work, that'll never work. That's all he would say, right? He would just roll his eyes and all the
they've seen it all before,
right? All the body language, right? Right.
How many times have we seen this stuff? It's happened all over and over.
So then it got to be a point where it's like, no matter what this guy said, it's like, so then finally it's then he goes, it'll never work. And so he turned around to the guy and he says, okay, I realize that it'll never work. However, if it did work, how would it work? And so the guy goes, I'll show you. Grabs the pen out of the guy's hand and gets on the whiteboard and just starts solutioning everything out. The CEO, about halfway through it, looks at everybody like, what the heck? And at the end, he goes, see? And the CEO goes, well, why don't we just do that? and it's like a limiting belief, right? It's an ownership kind of thing that occurs. And when you see that, right, you have to deconstruct it and reframe it. Let me give you another example. And I want everybody on this call, I want this to be, I know this is going to be posterity. I want this to be greenfield. I want everybody to be able to get value in this. So I know that right now, things are tough and people are having a hard time trying to find jobs, and there's some layoffs, especially in tech, and everybody's interviewing, right? I had somebody that reached out to me, linked me. I get what do I say when they ask me about what's my greatest weakness? Right. And I said, oh, I've got a great answer for that. You can't wait to get that. That's a question you're begging. Right. And I said, let me reframe it to you. You know what your greatest weakness is? It's your greatest weakness. capital G, capital W. You know why? Because your greatest weakness is a clue to your misapplied superpower. Let me say that again, because I want people to write this down. When you have a greatest weakness, that's a clue to a misused superpower. And the minute you reframe it, somebody says, what's your greatest weakness? I am so glad you asked me that question, but dying to answer it. So let me tell you what I actually enjoy my greatest weakness. And let me tell you why. And then you deconstruct it, right? You capital G, capital W. And that's my point, is you remove this stigma of a greatest weakness to something that is powerful, that is liberating, and you take control over that conversation. Same thing, right? It's a great objection handling thing for salespeople.
Right. And it doesn't feel like a humble brag when you frame it like that. It doesn't feel like you're going, oh, well, I just happen to be just too much of a perfectionist, and I want too much for the other people. Like, that just feels like a humble brag. Whereas you're like, I'm so glad. Here is what it is, and here's how I attack it. You know?
Exactly, right. And you're saying, because then
framing.
somebody's going to look at you and go, well, if he does that for that, then he probably does that for a bunch of other stuff too.
Right.
That's really what you're transmitting. And so that was my advice, right? And so they leaned into it, and I said, how'd it go? And they go, of course, the recruiter was taken back. I was like, what? I was like, you're ready for like, oh my goodness, I don't know. I'm just too honest. I'm too humble.
I'm too competitive. That's it.
Right.
I want to win too. Or you could do it like Homer Simpson, who just said, I eat too many donuts. I love
that is
actually, I gotta tell you the best thing about this. First of all, I thought we were going to lose people when we started talking about Johnny Carson. Half the audience has no idea who Johnny Carson is anymore.
Oh, I was about to give Tom super credit for vocabulary. Like, we give super credits here on the show, Tom, for use of vocabulary. And Dan, I can't believe you didn't notice this. And we give confetti.
Well, you said reticent. You said
I know. Well, he said non sequiter. So this is what we get. Non sequitur gets the confetti. That's what we get.
You got to give him.
You give him reticent. Look, I'm going to be on the leaderboard of fancy words, right?
But even better, even better. He said, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed.
Oh, yes.
Welcome to 1971. What's next? I'm sitting in the catbird seat. Okay.
Yeah, right. Are you getting up and at 'em today?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. That's awesome. So, but that does pose a question for me of people in the higher echelons of these Fortune 100 companies. They may not be of our era anymore. They may not be. And so is what worked for us then still working now in helping one improve their career and in sales and all that stuff?
Yeah, I think, people are people. And though the slang or whatever goes from generation to generation, and maybe there's a bit of learning there, the people are people. I'll give you an example. There was a CEO of a large manufacturing company in the Midwest that I was talking to. It was one-on-one, and he was wanting to buy some software, and he was getting all like he was a younger, right? He was sort of going up the ladder, and he got to this job. And I have a feeling he probably didn't know how he got there. And so we're pitching to him, and it got to a point where I'm sitting here by himself on the phone, and he goes, well, Tom, I just want to make sure I make the right decision for my company, and I am all of this and on and on. And I said, sir, can I be candid and transparent with you? And he's like, oh, absolutely. Why wouldn't he be? I said, well, I just want to make sure that we can. He goes, okay. He goes, that's a bunch of BS. And he goes, excuse me? I'm like, well, is it okay? He's like, no, that's fine. I'm now interested, right? What do you think? He goes, look, you've never purchased this. You've never spent this kind of money before. You didn't purchase. You don't want to make a mistake because you don't want to look bad. You don't have all the information, right? There's a level of confidence that you're missing. And and that's perfectly normal. It's perfectly normal. So for me to be able to help you get past that, like forget like the purchases. How do we get you to a place where you have confidence and discipline and all of the things you need to be able to grow as a leader? And so he took it. I guess I hit the nerve or whatever, but he kind of, and we were alone. And he goes, you're absolutely right, Tom. I said, I have sort of this imposter syndrome going on, and I just want to do what's right. I don't want to lose my job. I don't want to be embarrassed. I don't want to make a mistake and have everybody go, say, I told you the young guy can't do anything. And I said, okay, good. All right, let's work on that, right? So give you a structure on that first, and then let's get back to, purchasing software, which, by the way, we did that, and they purchased software, and we won the deal. But we took a step back in doing that. And guess what, folks? That is selling, right? That is selling today. And that works because nobody, I don't care how old you are, right? We don't want to be embarrassed. The older you are, you kind of sort of used to, right? You kind of got being beat up. And so you feel, okay, well, I understand this, and it's part of the game. But it's not pleasant.
Yeah.
It's like,
that's right. Yeah, it's not okay. Do you find that even in your higher level coaching with clients that are, experienced and very, very successful? And I mean, successful, like most people don't even understand, like ballpark, how much does a top salesperson make at like Oracle or something like that?
Oh, somebody, back in the old days, 7 figures commission on one deal is not an unusual check.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And so, I mean, that's the type of world we're talking about. So in these people, and as people move up I guess in title, let's say, do you find that the emotions still play in there, or are they still insecure, just like, regular humans?
Yes. There's still a significant amount of insecurity. I will tell you the hardest job anywhere in the world is the line manager, right? Because that is when the skill flips from an individual contributor, like a sale, like let's just again stick around sales, right? From a salesperson to a sales manager, that is the biggest challenge. First of all, you probably have a cut in pay because you've been picked because. Remember, we go back to the earlier discussion. You've been picked because you're the best salesperson. So you've probably made a lot of money. Now you're the sales manager, and you probably have an accumulation number of all of the people, right? Which is a lot less than what you made last year, right? Which is a hit to the ego because you're thinking, well, I don't make as much, therefore I must not be as good and all this. So no, that's not the case. And then you get to a director level and on and on. And by the way, that making your number thing starts getting watered down a little more as you go up the chain. That isn't so much what's required. I will tell you how you get to the next level. And again, it goes back to what I said earlier, your ability to remove obstacles across departments. I mean, if you did that alone, that's worth one promotion right out of the gate. Right. Really? If you spent on, hey,
see, this is the secret stuff, Chris Stone. You don't get this just from anyone.
Right. So that's, if you just did that to begin with, you're going to get on the radar very quick. I'm going to tell you another story. Carly Fiorina. So Carly Fiorina I'm a big Carly Fiorina fan. So I'm just going to come out and tell everybody that right out of the gate. She used to have.
Why don't you explain who she is for the HP? Listen.
Yeah, so she was the CEO of HP for a while. She actually did. She closed the Compaq deal and did a bunch of things at HP that I think were, which put them in a good position. She actually ran for president at one point, I think, or at least the nomination. I just think she's a wonderful person. I follow her. I listen to read her book. That's all. And she used to have a succession planning meeting at HP, and it went something like this. Like, they didn't have any open jobs or anything in leadership, but she thought, I want to know about people. So every meeting, this succession planning, I think she used to run it like once a month or once a quarter or something, with no any need. She would say, all right, Dan, why don't you tell me about, your up and coming. Okay, I got this lady and she's got this and she's married and she's got these 2 kids, but man, she's totally blah, 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 blah. She's got this extra unique thing. Great, right? Go on to the next person and on and on and on. And he just kept doing that. And then it was time, right? Now there's a slot open, right? And somebody goes, hey, I have a new slot. I have a person. I need to fill it. They left. I need somebody. You know what I was thinking? Dan, I think you've got the person I want, right? Because even though I've got great people on me, that's not really going to do anything for my organization. It's not going to shake it up. It's not going to create the diversity of thinking I need. And so, hey, can we promote your person into my organization? And that's how she built, that staff, right? Is to understand and before the need showed up. And I think we need to do a lot more of that, as opposed to we kind of wait until something breaks, somebody leaves, and then go, okay, well, like who closed the most deals? And somehow that turns into they should be the next manager, which is just a non sequitur. Boom.
Yeah.
Can I get some confetti?
Well, no, you
Did I
can't
use
use
it
the
again?
same one.
Can't use the same one. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
You can.
I have to stop being pedantic. The second.
Pedantic.
Oh,
thank you very much, ladies and
Not the
gentlemen.
first time
Yes.
that's been, but that is excellent. Excellent. Excellent.
Oh no,
That's good confetti.
I've got a million of them.
Well-
so anyway, go ahead.
No, it's just that I'm enjoying your soliloquy and stoicism.
Boom.
And so
Don't try. Don't.
Okay.
You're trying too hard.
He's just begging now.
yeah. No, but this is great. So so I'm renaming you the coach for 7-figure earners. So here it is when somebody is, there's a point where people reach that money is no longer the driving factor. And it's different levels for everybody, much lower for some, much higher for others. But there is that point where, okay, we're okay. And they kind of shift and they get to that point that they want to, they have other goals and other things that are driving them. Now, when that kind of switch happens, something could happen in their life. There's emotional changes. There's
Like your daughter getting married.
Amen.
Yeah. So there's different. She is I picked her up from the airport from their honeymoon, and she's. I swear to you, it's like she's a different person, much better. But it's the craziest thing. Anyhow, maybe I'm different. Who knows what it is? But how does somebody know that they need you when things are going so well, but that there's other crap going on in the background?
Yeah, see, that's a good question. I'll tell you why. And I actually wrote a blog post about that on LinkedIn. I'll summarize real quick. I want to use the butterfly, right, metaphor. Anybody who talks about transformation, right? They think of a caterpillar to a butterfly. That's beautiful. It becomes like your, maybe your opening slide, and hey, we're going to transform you into something beautiful, right? Whatever. The thing is, we need to go one step deeper into that discussion, because I think that's where the value comes. Let's just go back to the butterfly. If you were just to change, you would just become a bigger, stronger caterpillar, right? You just be more of what you are. But if you want to transform and become a butterfly, something completely different, there's a couple things you have to do. First of all, caterpillars eat a ton of food. They eat so much food that they grow 100 times their size. Now, why is it that they do that? Because they're going to need all those resources. Second, once they're in there, right, the transformation begins. The transformation has to be completed, and at any time, if you interrupt that transformation, the caterpillar and butterfly, or the potential butterfly, dies. And so what I always tell people is, okay, is it going really well? You got all this other stuff. Great. Now it's this time. Now's the time to transform, because you've eaten and become 100 your size. Let's start. Let's plan. Let's get it going, because guess what? Eventually, it's not going to be that way anymore. Right. And so that's so hard, right? I had another friend of mine, I was selling into, or trying to sell into, a large company. And he was the vice president of sales there as well. And he's like, Tom, I'd love to have you and everything. He says, but things are going really well. I just don't think I can, say that this is what we need to do. And I gave him the pitch and everything. And, it wasn't him, right? He couldn't pull it off. And I said, okay, great. Give me a call or whatever when he gets a chance. And sure enough, I always follow through. And not only do I follow through, but I try to figure out like how the company is doing, right? I'm big on financial ratios and understanding, because financial ratios tell you a ton of things. Because by the way, that's what companies are doing. They're looking at their own financial ratios and making decisions. And so you need to do that as well. And if you don't understand financial ratios, there's a whole bunch of data on the internet about that stuff. But you need, if you got a customer and they've got their financial ratios out there, you need to know them just like you know your own numbers, because that's the language that they're speaking internally. And sure enough, their financials were in the toilet, and they did really. And then by that time, it's like, oh yeah, Tom, can you come help us? We've got 30 days to turn it around. So you're asking about how does that happen, and how does the transformation? I think there's a whole bunch of different kinds of reframes that I would put people through, like I have today.
So anybody can use you at any time to get yourself on the right track. But you see, here's the challenge, Chris Stone. He's usually only available to hotshot players for big money. But here, because of the Dan Jordan live show, I spoke
You're going to make me do
earlier.
this now, are you? You're going to make me do this, aren't you?
I'm asking you. He's offering a free 30-minute consultation with a guy to take you the coach for the 7-figure earners. If you mention this show. And so we'll make sure that we'll get something out to him, I'm sure. So how does somebody get a hold of you, Tom Tonkin?
Well, it's interesting. I have, between having a lot of publications out on the internet and having a unique name, I think you'd be hard pressed not to find me if you just Googled the name. And certainly my email's out there, and my LinkedIn. I'm usually hanging out on LinkedIn. That's kind of where my peeps are. So, okay. Peeps, am I?
I think you can still say term? Peeps. And we're coming up on Easter, so
it's not gonna.
Am I too old for peeps, or like?
Never too old for peeps. You put them in the microwave for 15 seconds and
watch
they get
them blow up, or what?
Well, that's all. Well, listen, I can't tell you how see. This is exactly what I needed, to find out to deal with the big world, because people are scared to go into the bigger companies because they think that people are different. So it's good to know that they're
more specialized. I think that's probably the only difference that I would make. They're more specialized, right? And so there's an aspect of that I think it needs to be highlighted. But other than that, goals, motivations, and desires, they're like us.
Well, if you had to leave us with one point of advice that can help a executive achieve their goals, actually for the rest of this year, achieve their quota and goals, if you had to give them one thing to do, what would you say to do before we go?
I want you to keep one statement in mind, and I have this statement. I'm known for it. Different isn't always better, but better is always different. If you want to be better, it has to be different.
Look at that.
Oh, I like that.
I know.
Yeah, I mean, we got to, let me hit the end button now. That was beautiful.
Yeah, that was good. That's a mic drop moment. Way to go. I appreciate you coming on so much. It's rare that I get somebody who I get to call doctor and actually has the ability to converse so easily with us laymen.
That's another show.
Terms. Okay, that's another show. We'll go for there. Chris Stone, awesome job. Is he not amazing? Tom Tonkin with his producing. Is he?
No, he's like the Picasso of video over there.
That's right. Here's my impression of Picasso. All right, there we go. Hey, listen, they're not all golden. No, I appreciate you all coming. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much. Stick around for 1 second right after we go. For you guys watching, I wish nothing but good things to happen to you. Eat well, live long, and prosper. Go get them today.